Before we start, I'd like to recommend you the channel of Zephy Wings. Just like me, they are doing Rusty Lake theories, and doing it quite seriously. I would like us to support them, the link is in the description. This video contains spoilers for Underground Blossom. Before watching, consider checking out the game yourself, and ideally, my recap. My motto is: question everything in Rusty Lake. This is the motto of a theorist. It's multi-valued, but today I would like us to focus on just one of its meanings. Question everything you see. But what does it mean? If you see a torn photograph in a game, it doesn't necessarily mean someone tore it apart. Most likely, it's just the developers entertaining you with a puzzle. If you see a man shooting himself in the head, and then, as if nothing happened, driving a bullet to a club, it doesn't mean he went anywhere at all. It's probably just a fever dream. And if you see archenemies playing chess for their lives with only 2 pieces, then one of them kills the opponent after winning only 1 out of 2 games, it doesn't necessarily mean that they're actually sitting there and playing like that. Chances are, it's symbolism. And moments like these are everywhere in Rusty Lake, and Underground Blossom has the most of them. Here's nowhere, and we are here today to sort things out in this chaos of allegories. And also to see how well my predictions about this game have held up. I want to clarify, this isn't a deep dive, where I present different views. Yeah. Today I'll simply give my personal opinion, and if you don't agree with me right now, or have something to add or object to, feel free to comment. Don't be shy. So, let's answer the main question of Underground Blossom. What is the subway? Before, we had other various ways to frame the narrative. For instance, the hotel elevator bringing Dale through his memories, or Bob's dreams induced by a machine. Examples like these are numerous, and all are either way bound to the game world, whether it's physically or at least in the character's mind. But the subway is different. Unlike the predecessors, it's simply a metaphor. But why? Why can't the underground be in the real world, or is a real one, in the character's mind or in their distorted memory? Even I myself made a global prediction about the subway in the multiverse of cubes. Let's go in order. The subway, physical or not, cannot be an analog of Dale's elevator. The point is, the elevator is real, and even somewhat trivial. It's just a normal elevator shaft, albeit a long one, built during the hotel construction and having a specific purpose: to connect its floors with the cube at the lake bottom. And the elevator moving through the cube themselves is just a perception trick. And the subway? On an everyday level, it's useless. It's pricier than the elevator, and the stations don't even closely compare in their accuracy to the cubes from Seasons, Birthday, and Theater. Also, the subway can't be a simulation like Paradox or the White Door, where the train is an interface for traveling between images of Laura's mind. These images clearly extend beyond the woman's point of view. Moreover, even beyond the point of view of those who could orchestrate such a simulation. Harvey doesn't look like a bird with a plan. He walks that path with Laura upon Rose's direct request and without spoilers. And thus horribly screws up. Even Mr. Owl doesn't know all. He's hardly aware of blooming roses, and is unable to build simulations around them. It's as if he's not even in the story. And the major argument against the game being literal. The Sorrow Cross Station. It happens when Laura's and Dale's shared story is in full swing. Bob's break-up with Laura, her demise, the investigation and soul corruption. And everything happened not like that, not there, and over the course of several years. Having a train station is an interesting location. New trains come by, new people arrive, and, in a way, taking a train to the next station symbolizes a new chapter in someone's life. We've already brainstormed about this concept for quite some years. Laura has been one of the main characters throughout the Rusty Lake series, and since we have been quite secretive about big parts of her life, we thought matching this concept with Laura was a perfect fit. This is exactly what the Rusty Lake developers wrote in the Underground Blossom devlog. definitely confirming my suspicion that I made before the game was even released. The subway is more of a big metaphor than a physical location. There is actually no subway. In fact, nobody rides the trains for real. Harvey is not an anthro. More on that later. But if it's just a metaphor, how are we supposed to get what's happening in the game? Take it easy, it's not that bad. Don't forget that the devs play the long game. The series is long and already convoluted, while they still have the story to be told. So much so that even casual fans could get something. So let's become casual fans, skip all the fluff and get to the main point. And what's the point? Here is Rose. Here's her daughter, Laura. Rose asks Harvey the Parrot to help with Laura. Laura grows up. Rose knows that she will have to leave her, despite wanting to stay. So she asks Harvey to protect Laura and even entrusts him with a timepiece that should help. Albert kidnaps Rose, Laura is horrified, Laura is traumatized, Laura withdraws into herself and stays lonely for years until she meets Bob at the Bird Bridge station. And the timepiece gets stolen. And here's the thing. All this abstract pantomime turns out to be much clearer than, let's say, Seasons. Which one would think at times more literal than Underground Blossom. Let's leave Laura for a while and switch our focus to her mother. What was she up to all these years of absence? The secret research facility station, previously teased in the ARG, takes place soon after Bird Bridge and gives some insights on the connection of Underground Blossom and the past within, since it's the same location where Rose will resurrect Albert. I'm a bit surprised that she worked under her real name. A familiar name can draw unnecessary attention while working for Mr. Owl, who's supposedly against a return of an uncontrollable maniac that knows secret of cubes, magic, and reality. The pseudonym on her tape from Best Kept Memory seems more appropriate. Another thing that surprised me was the whole The Past Within plan right here on the blackboard. In The Past Within it seemed that Rose didn't know about the cube escape and becoming a tree. Albert's revelations seemed unexpected for her, just as they were for us. But apparently, through Albert they simply delivered us some cheap exposition. We've also got some brand new information on corrupted souls. It's for the first time that a hungry ghost was shown as an actual predator. Before they played the role of force of chaos and destruction, or they were watchers and schemers. We have never ever seen them actually hunting for food and entertainment. Also, I'm a bit confused. We've seen them teleporting and even passing through walls. But how do they manage to keep Albert inside his cell? And believe me, I had a similar question in mind when Bob was staying in the White Door. Finally, I would like to speak about Rose herself. Now it's apparent that the motive behind all her actions is Laura, even reviving her horrible father, who doesn't give a crap about Laura. The cubes, the resurrection, the sacrifice, it's all for her. For now, I'm uncertain whose resurrection and whose sacrifice Rose meant. Could be the sacrifice of Rose, could be Laura's herself. Even the global plan of Rose is unclear. It seems no more that Albert made her work for himself, with Laura's blossom as a consolation prize. Laura herself is getting something from that, and I have no idea what. Either way, we witness the exact moment of Rose extracting her memory cube containing the past from the past within for a test run of the cubicle device. During the test we see flashbacks, and we don't recognize the most interesting among them. The last flashback with Albert screaming. We'll possibly see it in a future game, since we've got a message that Rose's journey isn't over yet. Going back to Laura herself, the last station where we see her alive is Sorrow Cross. We've seen her break up with Bob, her depression, her nightmares, but what's frustrating, Laura's trip to the lake is missing. It's one of the first events depicted in the series, seemingly very important. And the plot development, the lore development, only added more mystery, raised more questions. Why the heck did Owl arrange a trip to the lake for Laura? Underground Blossom was a perfect opportunity to open the veil of mystery, especially considering that Harvey, the protagonist of Underground Blossom, went there with Laura and saw everything. Although, I guess I can understand it. The game is still about Laura, not Mr. Owl and his schemes. Moreover, after 8 years, we finally got the answer to why Laura suffered from depression and died. No, it wasn't the incident at the lake, not Bob's jealousy, not the return of William's memory, not Dale's corrupted soul, and not even Albert's machinations. Well, there were some, but that's not the point. Laura missed her mother. Dr. Clark's letter explicitly states that her fears are deeply rooted in her past. Prozac, that was to help figure things out, triggers visions of Rose. Laura's dying question was, where did she go? And it turned out that throughout the entire episode, Laura was clutching a portrait of her mother close to her chest. Yes, usually allegories hinder understanding, but here they only play into its hands. And you know, I like this version even more than taking Laura's murder in Paradox literally. I love Paradox, but I love Roots too. It's a magnificent game with interesting characters and an invaluable impact on the lore. And I don't care that its retroactive changes also influenced the very beginning of the story in a simple, but at the same time, elegant way. I don't know if I'd accept a different retcon as warmly. So, we leave Sorrow Cross, and along with it, the clarity of what's happening, because the games that are supposed to take place at this time aren't entirely clear, and some probably haven't even been released. The station that follows symbolizes a period of darkness in Laura's soul. This is uncharted territory, or nearly so. The station admittedly reminds us of Winter from Seasons. The same decay, the same disordered wires, the same determination of Laura at the end of the day. That we are to wake up in her, while she's lying in the middle of the platform at the shapeless globe. With the help of the Butterbee, we remind her of something important. Of what and how exactly is a big mystery. Through torture, we get Rose's timepiece back, and give it to Laura as well. It clearly does something to her, and immediately shatters, while Laura herself fills with determination to leave this depressing place and finally do something about her life. And once again, we don't know what exactly the timepiece gave her. Seemingly, it revealed her the way to the lake, a place, as we know from the past within, with no time and where souls blossom. And she takes Harvey there with her. When I shared early theories about the past within, I formulated the idea of a multiverse of cubes. Every cube like this is a reality, every reality is a cube, and all cubes float in the lake where time does not exist. Underground Blossom doesn't confirm all that definitively, but at the very least, it doesn't deny the reality of the inhabitants of the cubes, nor the canonicity of the past within, because we witness the consequences firsthand. Rose that grew old, previously kidnapped by Albert, and much younger Rose from her memory cube, and the tree, the one they both transformed into. And judging by their monologues, they actually broke free from their cube worlds, and they actually found some novel way of enlightenment that came the closest to the source material Nirvana. And they believe that Laura is still able to blossom, and even ask Harvey for help with that. Next, roses pass on their blossom to Laura, and she leaves again. Or something like that. It's funny how everything turned out. I was looking at the energy teaser about Rose's lab, looking at the interface elements and the strange apparatus, thinking that someone as smart, who helped Albert to resurrect, could also help Laura. I only didn't expect Rose at all to become a tree by that point. It caught me off guard. And the options of how she could help expanded accordingly. let's not forget that underground blossom is still a metaphor. Said help, represented by the petal tornado, may now involve not only technology, for example, the Seasons machine, but also magic, I reckon. Why go small? She could help with everything about Seasons, that in theory are cubes located right there in the lake. And the flower that Harvey brought Laura in winter could now easily be a gift from her mother, even though Harvey delivered it without us. Whatever occurred in reality, after that, according to Laura, the trauma of the loss of her mother doesn't haunt her anymore. She's ready to live another life without sorrow. And the lake now belongs to her, whatever that might mean. After that, she takes her leave into the forest, and Harvey goes his own way. Laura's words are another reason why I place the underground blossom ending alongside Seasons. Because in their ending, it showed that she successfully avoided death and spent at least another 17 years inside the cube, alive and happy. And there are other cubes nearby, and a leafless tree that may have become Rose. So I position all that in 1981, at the end of the timeline. I don't see any reason not to trust this date in Seasons. Before we continue, if you like what I'm doing, leave thumbs up and subscribe to the channel. It really helps. And now back to the video. But all is not that straightforward, and I already anticipate your objections. Because the game doesn't end there. Harvey switches his attention to Mr. Owl, who congratulates him with a successful accompaniment of Laura, and asks to meet him in the lake in order to get a new task: to collect the cubes. And after we collect them and place them in the right order, we'll see Laura again, inside a big white cube with the elevator, soon after Dale's departure to the hotel in winter 1972, not 81. She's suddenly alive, although in the cave game she was corrupted, as if the blossom resurrected her. Mr. Crow says that she's ready, that we will meet again, and takes her to the hotel as well. In addition to that, if you recall a teaser achievement once more from the cave, the timepiece was shattered back then too, not 9 years later as I state. Here's the deal. In the order of events where Laura first blossoms and then rides the elevator, I see 3 inconsistencies. For one, it implies that Rose somehow helped Laura's soul while it was stationed in the big white cube. But it's hardly possible. However Laura was resurrected, it was a part of Mr. Owl's plan. But he is unlikely to know about Rose turning into a tree, as well as about Albert's resurrection in the future that preceded it. If I were Owl, I would put in all the effort possible in order to prevent it from happening. Even more so, to prevent it from happening in my own laboratory with the help of my own equipment. So he hardly could incorporate Rose into his plan. For 2, I am inclined to believe Laura's words. One of us will die, the other will find enlightenment. That's what she once said to Dale, while both she and Rose said to Harvey about a new life with no sorrow. And to immediately waste it on a deadly lottery would be foolish, and would devalue the marvelous underground blossom ending. Well, and for 3, when opening the big marble cube, Laura's dying question about Rose echoes around. Where did she go? A question that, mind you, we seem to have resolved about half an hour ago. It all looks as if the conflict was rewinded back in time, to the period of Soul Street Station or even earlier. I think it's important to remember here that there is no time in the lake. Since Rose from 1926, Rose from 1984, and Laura from a year somewhere in between all found themselves in one place at one time, then Harvey doesn't necessarily have to visit the lake in chronological order. Even the developer sat in the game synopsis that will witness one of Laura's timelines, in plural. I address this subject in my predictions about Underground Blossom, And long story short, I see Laura having at minimum 2 major timelines. The timeline where she dies, where Dale opens case 23 and gets into Mr. Owl's hands, into the elevator, and the timeline cultivated by Laura's ghost in Seasons 10 years later, in which she never died in the first place and happily lived for all that time without sorrow. The elevator timeline and the Blossom timeline, and Harvey travels between them. As for the box, it's great when achievements and teasers are canon, but unfortunately it's not always the case. For example, how did little Laura appear on TV in Seasons? And by the same logic, who gathered all these items and threw them into the lake? Unfortunately, the only meaningful answer so far is the developers, and not somebody among their characters, which arguably means that the crate exists on the meta level only, and not inside the story. And even if the box ends up being canon, it was thrown into the same lake where time does not exist, so it could simply raft from the future. By the way, about the box itself. Among its numerous contents, there's one thing that disappointed me, and one thing that gives hope for the future. The key, which I mistook for the key to room 6 at the hotel, actually turned out to be the key to a pathetic, useless locker 6. Big hopes didn't come true. It's as if all the potential went into a cheap, inappropriate reference. And the Golden Cube business card didn't even show up. This seemingly suggests that in the crate, there were teasers not only for Underground Blossom, but also for something else. Perhaps the culmination of Dale in the hotel. And consequently, there's a chance that the key will return and redeem its uselessness. Collecting cubes for Mr. Owl across the stations and subsequently returning to the hotel looks like time travel. As it seems, not a big deal for a series where the past is never dead and not even the past in the first place. But here's the fact. We've never seen anything like that, for sure. But no doubt, we've already got that the subway isn't the elevator, nor a simulation. Harvey actually returns to the hotel in the past in order to help Mr. Owl with an upcoming day of the lake. Some may think out of nowhere that it's a prequel to the hotel game, but I'm sure this is more of a sequel. I base this on the subway plan. I'm convinced that the stations on it are arranged in chronological order. The decisive argument is other secret stations. The lab is placed around the 60s, with rows having aged respectively, and according to hints from the ARG, best kept memory takes place already in our millennium, which is much later than all the events in all the games. And all this chronology is perfectly reflected on the plan. The station with the hotel is depicted not in the past when Harvey was killing the guests, but right above the creep station, shortly after Laura's birth. In my opinion, it's a good moment to start preparing the master plan of the whole series. And now, I want you to listen to me carefully. Harvey shouldn't be an Asura. Harvey was such only in one game before, and that's Hotel. In the secret epilogue, we saw how he died and how Owl personally resurrected him as a bird, and he was hardly capable of more, which Harvey invariably remained in all the other games in this series. We know he lived with Laura, perching in a cage, eating bird food, and crapping under himself. The freaking cardboard box was an actual problem for him. The goddamn samsara wheels classified him as an animal alongside fish. Not once did he turn into an Asura, even in life and death situations. Until Underground Blossom came out. So here's the deal. The looks of Harvey here are either yet another metaphor or a blatant retcon. Let's be frank, this game is not the best source of evidence. Metaphors do more harm than good to understanding. It makes you doubt what you see. So if the subway is just a stage, then Harvey's appearance looks more like a costume. All those photos and drawings with him are like props, and interactions with ordinary mortals a theatrical improvisation. The only problem is the timepiece and the thief taking it. It's hard to dismiss them as mere gameplay because they are essential to the very point of the story I was describing in the beginning. They cannot be discarded without damaging the story. At the same time, people don't rob parrots. But damn it, neither they rob asuras. They don't even know about their existence. And if the developers decide out of blue to change the essence of Harvey, if we suddenly see him as an asura in a more literal setting, they have to give an explanation as to how this happened. And God forbid that explanation will contradict the lore or common sense. Because otherwise, the series is screwed. Not earlier than the last game, The Past Within, we had a whopping 3 such moments. I'm willing to overlook many things, but not the Golden Cube, created not as in the cave and working not as claimed there, and not Harvey. And because of them, it becomes harder to turn a blind eye to everything else. Dear developers, Martin, Robin, I implore you, think it over, or at least give us a clue that it matters for you, that you have the lore and you stick to it. And if you change it, please be delicate. After all, you managed to make Rose the cause of Laura's death. It was a beautiful, logical, and yet unexpected twist. An ideal retcon. By the way, thank you for this long-awaited answer. So, it's time for a verdict. After the lengthy experiment of The Past Within, we've returned back to the familiar gameplay. In a way, it feels nostalgic. The only difference is that the narrative is much more indirect, which to me looks like yet another experiment. This doesn't hinder the perception of the plot. In some places it even helps, but it does complicate the understanding of the lore overall. Not all theorists were prepared for the subway just for the sake of it, with no in-lore explanation. The game itself is pretty captivating, and unexpectedly very beautiful. Perhaps the most beautiful game in the series. The secret station in the hotel, the dream sequence, and the finale are genuinely works of art. There are many references in the game, maybe even too many. I genuinely love references, some have been very useful for assembling the chronology and the overall lore, but details like the stamp from birthday seem to be borderline member berries. And the keys from the hotel are a downright mockery. I like the achievements in Underground Blossom more than in The Past Within. They are still far from perfect. The story achievements and mindless clickers brought me back in Cube Escape Collection, but I vividly enjoyed searching for cubes between the stations. It reminded me of the achievements in the aforementioned collection that involved multiple games at once. I also liked the secret achievements, especially the secret levels. I'm thrilled that the distribution center from the ARG made its way from the demo to the release. I'm glad that the lab came out sometime after said release. But I was even more pleased with the scenes featuring the marble cube and the hotel. Although not immediately, but in the end I've got the hype reinforcement for the new Albert storyline. But in addition, I've got it for the old Dale storyline too. Crazy to think, are we about to get its finale? And if we are, the devs are better to captivate the fanbase with something big enough before it ends. Unfortunately, it seems they aren't doing particularly well. There are some hardcore fans who are really disappointed by recent games, even though it's only partially the devs' fault. While I personally stay cautiously optimistic, only worried about lore consistency, they get annoyed about the lack of reliable plot development. Yeah, we've got Albert returned, but he hasn't done much since. Yes, for objective reasons of a production hell, but still. Yeah, we've got a whole new game about Laura, but it is so vague, we understand nothing for sure except for Rose being the reason for Laura's death and also resurrection. I think the lab update is a good start. It's still just a relatively small secret level with not much explained, but it's particularly well made and gives me hope for the future. Here was Now Here, sharing opinions and theories about underground blossom. If you disagree with me on anything, feel free to object in the comments, or find me on Rusty Lake subreddit or the official Rusty Lake Discord. And remember, question everything in Rusty Lake.